Hello, fourth graders. Welcome to the Chapter 6 review, Part 3. Today, we're going to look at the common denominator. A common, which is a common multiple of the denominator of two or more fractions. Make sure you write that definition down. And you can add to that, they help us compare fractions with unlike denominators. Stop the tape and make sure you write all of this down. Here is a word problem in which finding a common denominator will help you answer the following questions. We have a table with the distance from home. There's the place and then the distance. We have the grocery store 3/5 mile away from home. The pharmacy, which is 1/2 mile from home. The burger place, which is 3/4 mile from home. And the health club, which is 8/10 of a mile from home. So now we have two questions. Are any places closer than 1/2 mile to home? One thing you can do is think about your benchmark half and compare all of these fractions. What the question is asking you is, when you look at these distances, are any of them less than 1/2? Being closer than 1/2 mile to home means you live less than 1/2 mile away. So what you're looking at is trying to determine whether or not these fractions are less than 1/2 mile. Finding a common denominator with all of these fractions would be one efficient method of determining your result, your answer. Oh, that was a mistake. Sorry about that. Get back there. Thank you. All right. So let's take a look at these denominators. We have tenths, fourths, halves, and fifths. I want to make equivalent fractions with all of these original fractions so that I can compare them more easily. Okay, so I have 3/5. I have 1/2. 3/4 and 8/10. I'm going to erase these equal signs. What I want to do is find a common denominator. 5, 2, 4, and 10. A common denominator is a common multiple. So one of the things that I like to do to find a common multiple is to look at the greatest denominator, and I will write out the multiples for that denominator, and each time I write one out, I'll look at the other denominators and see if that is a multiple of the other one. So the first multiple of 10 is 10, which 4 is not a multiple of 10. The next multiple of 10 is 20. Oh, 20, wait, let me back up. 4 is not a factor of 10, therefore 10 is not a multiple of 4. Now I'm on 20. If I look at fifths, I know that 20 is a multiple of 5. If I look at halves, I know that 20 is a multiple of 2. If I look at fourths, I know that 20 is a multiple of 4. And, of course, I just found out 20 is a multiple of 10. So I am going to use the least common denominator as my common denominator. So I want to change all of these to 20ths. All right, so that means I'm going to have to make equivalent fractions to create the common denominator. All right, let's see. 5, I'll change my color here, times 4 makes 20, so I need to multiply by 4 in the numerator, and I'll get 12. So 3/5 and 12/20 are equivalent. So another name for 3/5 is 12/20. 1/2. If I multiply 2 by 10, I will get 20. To make an equivalent fraction, I have to do the same with the numerator. So I have 10/20. To go from 4 to 20, I have to multiply by 5. Oops. I want that in red. Times 5 times 5. That's 15/20. Okay, and the last problem, 8/10, I want to convert to 20ths. So I am going to multiply tenths 2 times to make 20ths, the common denominator. Therefore, I have to multiply 8 2 times, and I'll get 16. So now I have my equivalent fractions. 3/5 are equal to 12/20. 1/2 is equal to 10/20. 3/4 is equal to 15/20. That is a 15, by the way, not 16. And 8/10 is equal to 16/20. All right, so if I look at this question, are any places closer than a half mile to home? Well, I'm looking at my new fractions, and I know that 10/20 is equal to half. And if there was any fraction less than 10 in these new fractions with the common denominators, the equivalent fractions, that would be a fraction less than 10, meaning, or a fraction less than half, meaning it would be closer than a half mile to home. None of these are less than 10/20. So no, there are no places closer than a half mile to home. No. They are all less than half, or greater than half. Greater than half. Okay. The next question is, are any places the same distance from home? Now today you had a similar problem in your chapter review, and I had a few people making these equivalent fractions over to the right, and you were comparing them to their original values. They're the same, so you don't compare the equivalent fraction to each other because that's the same. So one way, well, the only way you can answer this now, not the only way, but the best way, would be to see if any of these 20ths are the same. 12 20ths, 10 20ths, 15 20ths, and 16 20ths. None of those have the same numerator. They all have the same denominator. None of these are the same distance from home. No, no fractions are equivalent. And when I say equivalent, equivalent to each other, not to their original form. Okay, so this is a problem where using a common denominator would help you. All right. Okay, compare and order using a common denominator. I want you to change all of these fractions to equivalent fractions with a common denominator, all of them. Then compare them to each other, and in their original form, put them back in order from least to greatest. Okay, I'll be looking at your work tomorrow, so make sure you use a common denominator for all 5 of these fractions. And next, compare these 2 sets of fractions. Find a common denominator for each set. So 5/7 and 7/8, find a common denominator and make equivalent fractions and then compare. The same thing with, 10 12ths and 8/10ths. Find a common denominator for 12ths and 10ths, change to equivalent fractions and compare. And again, remember, common denominators help us compare fractions to determine which are less than, greater than, or equal to each other. So when you have word problems in which you were being asked which one's more, do you have enough, which one's the furthest away, which one is the closest, you want to change these fractions to common fractions that are equivalent with common denominators and then make your determination. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.